Katie here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And guess what? Another vinegar video. Gee, what a surprise. I just seem to keep having reasons to do more of these. Well, and part of that is I keep getting questions. Some of them are questions I've got through the years and never thought to do a standalone video answering that particular question, or sometimes they're even new questions. So the first one, the major one in this case being that if you're making vinegar and you have one of those situations where you got a lot of heat in the house that is causing your vinegar to evaporate quickly, then one question I get quite a bit is, can I add water to the process while it's fermenting when that happens? Now, while I'm sure you can, I personally would not recommend it. I have never done that. I rarely get that kind of evaporation around here on my vinegars. And of course it's going to happen to some degree because you're using cloth or a coffee filter or a paper towel or something that's going to allow the gases to escape, while also, most importantly, allowing oxygen to get in. Well, of course, as the gases are escaping, so is some of that liquid out of there as it evaporates. That's just to be expected. But again, it's rare this has ever happened to me. It's happened a couple of times where I've lost quite a bit, but you can see where these are. This one here is finished, and it is just a little further down than this other one that probably might need another week, few days to a week, because it's still pretty fizzy, so I'm going to let it sit for a little bit longer. But no, I don't recommend adding water while it is fermenting. What I highly suggest is you wait until the whole process is done, even if you've only got half of the liquid in there. The worst thing that's going to happen, other than not having as much vinegar, is the vinegar in there is going to be quite strong. And once it is done, at that point, you can decide whether or not you want to add water to it. Maybe you want to keep it that strong and then just dilute it as you need it. So for me, when I use the vinegar in my hair, I always dilute it when I go to use it. So I just put about that much in a little 8-ounce bottle. It might be about an ounce tops, and then top that off with water. So it's about a 1-to-7 ratio of vinegar to water in this case, because yeah, it's mostly water, but I don't need it full strength when I'm rinsing my hair. But typically for cleaning, I keep it full strength. But again, if you've lost a lot of liquid at that point and you want to use it for whatever you want to use it for, you might want to add water then. But again, I would at least test the strength based on taste or using your pH strips, as I've talked about in other videos. So I'm going to go ahead and strain this one out because it is done. And this is how I strain it. I have a stainless steel strainer. I think I should be able to still link to it down below. And then I have an 8-cup measuring cup, sometimes also referred to as a batter bowl. And then I just pour it in there. Now, either way, what you're going to have is especially when you're using scraps like this, when the vinegar is done, you may very well only end up with half the amount of liquid anyway. And that's to be expected. Usually if I'm doing herbal vinegars, I tend to have a lot more liquid in there. But with apple vinegar like this, even a scrap, you'll see there's a lot of pulp in there. That's to be expected. And so it can take a while for all that liquid to strain through. This will probably only give me maybe a quart. It looks like what I've got so far. And I will go ahead and start pouring it into my half-gallon jar, but keeping that strainer over the top so it's not dripping all over the counter, and then let it finish straining out in the batter bowl. That will just allow for more room in there because the strainer obviously dips down into the batter bowl. And also another very important thing is making sure that you have a good tight fitting lid on your jar when you go to put it in storage. And what I mean by that is airtight. So in this case, I'm using just a plastic ball lid like this. Another good option are these stainless steel ones that already come with the silicone in there. Boy, that's drippy. Either way, it's the same silicone liner. I suggest getting a liner, not just the ring like I've said in the past, but one that covers the whole inside of the lid, especially if it's plastic. It shouldn't be as much of a concern if it's stainless steel, but let's go ahead and put the stainless steel one on there, just so I can see what it looks like. I got the set, the stainless steel with the silicone liner from Azure Standard, and you can even buy the silicone liners by themselves, but I highly recommend one that covers the whole inside of the lid rather than something like this where it doesn't look like the ring is in there, but you have just the ring. If you're using plastic, you want that whole interior covered, because what you don't want is for any air to get in it once it's finished and you've got it in storage. And then the vinegar basically cleans up after itself, as I've heard it described, and then you'll just end up with nasty water. It won't taste like vinegar. It'll start to mold at that point. So this is why you want an airtight lid once it's done. So what I'm doing is, when this is done, because this is probably going to be, by the time this finishes, getting all the liquid out of this pulpy material, I might end up to about here. And then I should get that much more again out of here. So that will, at that point, I can complete this. Top this off, and then whatever else I have left, I can top off my vinegar jar here in the kitchen. That's usually what I do. And then on my jars like this in my vinegar storage, what I do now, I don't bother using tape. I don't use the lid. I actually write with a Sharpie directly on the jar. I put what type of vinegar it is. This is apple. And then the year, I'm not so much worried about the month. You can put the month if you want. Just because I have some vinegar that goes back to 23 and 24, I want to make sure that I'm working through the oldest stuff first. And anyway, so that's what I'll do with that. But yes, so determining how much you want to dilute it is going to be depending on your uses and how strong it is when it is finished. That includes with how you're going to use it in canning and so on. If I was going to can with it, let's say you're buying a 5% acidity vinegar from the store and you're diluting it with however much water for your canning project, then I recommend keeping it however strong it is. And but that's just my recommendation. I wouldn't bother diluting it other than what it would be required for the actual recipe. But yes, I do believe adding water to the process while it's fermenting isn't a good idea. I think it could possibly interfere with the fermentation process. And, you know, besides, having a stronger vinegar isn't such a bad thing. You can always dilute it later. And besides, it'll take up less room in storage if it's more concentrated. And then another quick question is, someone asked, this was a new one, is since during the vinegar making process, about at the halfway point, it takes about a month roughly. Sometimes it can take less, sometimes it can take more. A lot of it will depend on how the temperature of your home and wherever it is that you're fermenting it. But about the halfway point is when your bubbling really starts to slow down and you'll be at the alcohol stage. So it will taste and smell quite a bit like alcohol, like wine. And at that point, this is where the oxygen exposure is necessary, because then the oxygen exposure is going to turn the alcohol to acetic acid. Well, somebody asked me, well, at that stage, could I then go ahead and use that for extract making rather than using vodka or store-bought wine? And I say, you can, but I don't really see the point in that, when you could either let it finish and use the vinegar to make the extract, because now it's going to be just stronger all the way around, or if just make wine. The process is very similar. The difference is that you're not exposing the liquid to oxygen. You're wanting it to get a good strong wine, it needs to ferment for about a month total, just like your vinegar, but without any oxygen exposure, which is why you use an airlock when making wine. And it will be a stronger alcohol at that point than the one that you would get at the halfway point in making your vinegar. So yes, one of the main purposes I always have wine on hand, or make a lot of wine, is for making medicinal extracts, to save having to buy so much rum or vodka for for my different medicinal extracts. Most of the things I extract, I'm using the homemade wine. Some things I still use vodka, but this saves me a lot of money and tastes better using the wine. Or for an alcohol-free version, I just use my homemade vinegar. Typically vinegar mixed with raw honey for a better taste and the benefits of the honey as well. So anyway, that's my quick answer to that. Anyway, I don't recommend doing that. Just let it finish the process or decide to make wine from the beginning. And if you're interested in I did a newer winemaking video where instead of having it as a whole series, I did it in one single video, and I'll link to that down below. And what I'll do is I'll link to the full winemaking series with that video at the very top, but then you can skim through there and see a couple of the other things I have in there, like making mead and rhubarb margarita wine I make from time to time. So anyway, I hope that helps. Any other questions, feel free to put them in comments down below, because they do give me good fodder for making more vinegar videos. Or you can always email me at raincountryhomestead@gmail.com and I can answer. I'm more likely to see your emails than comments. Sometimes comments can get buried, but I do my best to answer comments when they come in. And don't forget to check out the video links I'll be putting in the description box down below by clicking on more or show more somewhere down here below the video screen. And thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.